Welcome to the Jackson Rudolph podcast. I'm your host, Jackson Rudolph, and this is episode 59. And you'll notice I'm not in the studio today. I'm back in front of the archives, and that means that it's time for another film study episode. We have a very exciting guest on the show for this film study. We have Chris Walker. He's been a successful point fighter for a long time, winning overall grands and helping Team Straight Up and Team All-Stars win team fights back throughout most of the 2000s. Now he's fighting up in the 30-plus division. We see him out there and active and taking wins there. A martial artist, a jack of all trades, a master of many trades. Chris, it's an honor to have you on the show, and I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit more to our black belt audience before we dive into some of these videos.
All right, thanks a lot, Jackson. It's a privilege to be here and hang out where I love what you're doing. Like you said, I've been doing this for a long time. I've been on a few different teams, Straight Up and All-Stars predominantly. I also represented Velocity for a little while. That's family in Florida. I've competed in every league that there has been in the States, and competed in every division that I can think of, with probably the exception of self-defense and NBL. I've done traditional forms, traditional weapons, creative, open, extreme forms and weapons, point fighting, continuous fighting. I do MMA. I'm now a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. So I like to encompass all martial arts, and I really like to kind of bring that perspective to each individual part.
Absolutely. And that's something that I think is so important to all of our fans here on the Black Belt Magazine Facebook page, is that anybody that's, subscribing to Black Belt Magazine and following our content is going to be somebody that loves anything and everything about martial arts, right? Trying to learn as much as they can from as many different styles. And that's the beauty of martial arts, is that there's always something to learn. No matter how high of a rank you get, you're always a student, and you embody that, and you've excelled in many different areas of the martial arts, which is incredibly impressive. And by the way, I want to give a shout out. You're also a podcast host of the CTE podcast, the Chris and Travis Experience, over at Martial Arts InterNetwork here on Facebook. So anybody that's tuning into this, if you enjoy the show, if you like listening to Chris talk, head on over and check out his podcast with Travis Plowden and Carlos Tierney. They do an excellent show. And then over at Martial Arts InterNetwork, they've got several different shows running right now that do a great job. Inside Scoop with Jeff Doss and Alex Dingman. Fist Kicks and Flicks was a show about old school martial arts movies. So highly recommend you guys go and check out Martial Arts InterNetwork. But after we dive into some of these videos, so I'm going to go ahead and get the screen shared here so we can get into this. And we are back. Sorry for the technical difficulties there, folks. Zoom was giving me some trouble with getting the screen shared. But now we're here. We have Chris Walker, who we've got on the show today, fighting Jack Felton, one of the greatest lightweight point fighters of all time. Now you guys are teammates. Here you guys were rivals competing against one another. Chris, go ahead and set the scene for us as this match gets going.
This is a 2004 AKA's Grand Nationals WSKF year. This is my first time ever fighting Jack. I came straight from traditional forms grands right on over. Jack is one of the fastest blitzers there is. I have to try to be very leery as a counter fighter to make sure I time that right. Jack has a nice control. Man, we really have gone back and forth over the years. We fought a lot. Coming through here, Terry Kramer's our center. I threw an axe kick and catch 2 points. Jack comes right back through with a blitz. They gave it to me on the counter. I was a very good counter fighter. I caught another pursue. He's pursuing with a kick. Oh, never mind. That's the one he gets. I get this next one, I believe. Jack takes off, and there's my counter. He's so fast that you have to be on it, but you have to be careful with Jack Felton because he has probably the best defensive sidekick in the game. As shown right there. So you can't take off him too far. You can't go and you can't sit on him.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And one thing that's interesting as the camera kind of shifts to this angle, we see Ray wearing his Straight Up uniform, your teammate, coaching Jack in the back. So maybe talk a little bit about why that was going on, because that might catch some people off guard.
Yeah, it'll catch a little people off guard, and some people have feelings about that. I understand that Raymond and Jack are pretty much brothers. Raymond took Jack under his wing when he was such a young competitor and has always been there with him. Teams, sometimes don't like that, but as a fighter and as someone who has my mentor, that's never been a problem for me. It's happened a few different times, and a coach doesn't necessarily make the fight; a fighter does.
Right.
So, that's never a problem. And obviously I don't have a problem with it. We've been on the All-Stars together since the inception. So this is a great fight. Jack comes off really fast here. I catch some of the advantages with Jack being more willing to go than maybe what we would say now with his experience. Here's my movement, cut offline, step off ridge hand to the body. And that was the final point. It was tied going into that last exchange. Jack was in the pursue, and I just happened to catch the backside and catch it a ridge hand. It's always an honor and a pleasure to fight Jack.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, Jack, in most people's book, one of the top 5, definitely, maybe even top 3, or some people's top 1 lightweight point fighters of all time, right? So being able to share the mat with him, be a teammate with him, and then obviously beat him in that match had to have felt pretty good. And you had a lot of great point fighting wins over your career. We can get into some of those highlights as we go through the show here. But you also had some great highlights in forms and weapons. You mentioned doing all the divisions, and now we're going to watch your traditional form, which is quite different from what if you went to a NASCA tournament today and watched traditional forms, you get more of a WKF style. But here we're going to see a little bit more of a performance style, the lower stances. I believe you're performing Seipai here. So just tell us a little bit about what running traditional forms was like back then on the NASCA circuit in open sport karate leagues.
In the sport karate leagues, like you said, it had to be a little bit more of a performance based rather than just the technical side of it. So you'll see different elements, the lower stances, the exaggerated movements that you don't necessarily see now. Through this, there was a lot. I mean, we had to compete against some of the, in my time here, I had to compete against some of the best competitors, I would say, of all time doing it in this style. We came off of a Gabe Renaga who created a performance-based kata, who made it exciting and allowed you to compete against the open competitors, the Richard Brandons, Mike Chats. That's what we had to do. So moving into that, I had to come in and I had to compete against John Su. So John Su was the man when I was coming in and starting in 03 Compete Nationals. I got second to John Su, and I knew that was the standard. And at that time, I had only run traditional forms. So competing against the likes of John, I mean, you absolutely had to.
Right. And speaking of John Su, we just watched your performance, very strong performance there. You talk about competing with John Su. Now we're going to look at John Su himself. This is 2005 Compete Nationals, and just kind of talk a little bit as we're watching this. What was it that made John Su that standard? What was it that made him hard to beat?
I mean, he has clean basics to begin with, so you can't take that away. That he performs more than he does karate. He's got great karate basics. With that, he has an intensity and he has a focus that is just top of the line. When you get that, and that's what traditional forms are. I mean, you have to put that energy and focus into exactly what you're doing. He does that, and he puts a show on while he does it. I mean, look, he's doing pistol squats. We call them pistol squats now. That would have been a wushu squat back in the day. He also did because he's a jack of all trades as well. He competed in many different areas.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of my favorite performances of his were the double chain whips that he was doing as a wushu stylist, right?
Yes, that in the team form with Al Safransky.
Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, I grew up watching this specific video is what I watched to kind of like base my traditional forms training for years and years and years. Because 2005 is around when I first started showing up at NASCA tournaments as like a little 8-year-old who sucked, right? And so I was watching John Su's videos to try to learn how to be good at traditional forms. And that was kind of a trademark. You talk about the pistol squat at the beginning, is people were always trying to find ways to add difficulty to traditional routines, whether it was John Su's pistol squat, Ryan Wells's kind of spinning horse stances, maybe a little bit talking a little bit about that.
Yeah, Ryan, Ryan and I did team forms for a long time, and he was so flexible and had such great balance that I asked him to watch old videos of Gabe Renaga, because we took that from Gabe when he did Goju Shio show, and he would do that big spin and stay low and then go, woo, one more time and do it again. We took that, I took that directly from him because of Ryan's flexibility. This right here is another one of the things that John would do, showing control and balance and poise in his stance after running such a long form. Again, and the performance base, you can't get much stronger than doing things like this.
Absolutely. And then the horse stance right after it too. Like,
right.
We see a lot of people try that like split technique there at the end of their forms, then they just kind of like shimmy on out of it and then finish. But he came right into the horse stance, which is incredibly difficult.
And then exploded out of that to finish the form. I mean, performance based with solid basics, you can't really get much better than that.
Absolutely. Yeah, he was always one of my favorites to watch. And now we're going to shift to Scott Wu of Team Pro Rank. And the reason that I want to bring up Scott Wu next is because I feel like Scott Wu was one of the last competitors to be successful with more of the performance style of traditional forms. I'd say probably the last competitor to be successful with it was Will Cornell when he was winning diamond rings. And then that's kind of when the changing of the guard happened to Jarrett. Jarrett Liker with his more WKF style routines, with Super Mpei kind of being his signature form. But before that, right before Will Cornell, there was kind of Scott Wu's reign over the Japanese Okinawan division. And this is kind of the point where people thought that it might be getting too far. And as we watch this form, I think some of our audience will see what I mean with some of the stances, some of the holding of the kicks. Chris, your perspective on kind of that evolution.
Man, you said it, very well just now. It got to a point where if we would do Japanese Okinawan katas in our divisions, but to, like, Scott is here, he's on stage at the US Open. It was very difficult for us to compete against Steve Terada, Mark Canonizato, Rudy Raynon, and those great competitors. So we had to add show to it. When you do that, sometimes you give up a little bit of the tradition and the actual base of your kata, and you're going to get some of these that super low horse stance. My instructor would kill me if I did that at the dojo, but and I'm sure his would as well. But performing to that, you have to kind of go to what's working. Circle inside, crescent kick to side kicks. These are not typical Japanese Okinawa movements, but like we said, it moved more to that performance base.
And something that I think is important for people to understand is that this is still incredibly difficult. It may not be the traditional karate that you would do in your dojo, but some of the stuff he's doing, I think he's got a front kick coming up that he's going to hold for like 10 minutes. Some of the stuff that he's doing is like, look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like, that was a 5-second hold on a front kick, full extension. So very difficult to do, despite the fact that it might not be the most traditionally accurate thing ever.
Right. Yep. Please don't think it's easy, because it's definitely not. You're right. But yeah, this was probably the around the last era. Will, you mentioned Will. Will had he did traditional Goju show for a very long time until he had to compete against Scott, and you had to make more of that performance based for that. So he did alter what he did to do that, and it's a different dynamic watching a performance versus the technique driven what we see now.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I'm going to rewind this and just let kind of the second half of this form play one more time, because it brings up an interesting question that I've thought about a lot. Does this style of traditional form, the more performance-based, the lower stances, your Scott Wu's, back to your Gabe Ray Nagas and everything in between, does that still have a place in our sport? Because I'm of the opinion that right now we have Japanese Okinawan and traditional challenge on NASCA. And effectively the same forms win that division. The divisions are judged exactly the same. The same people are going to win those divisions every time they compete in them, right? Because the judges are preferring the WKF style. Is there a place for maybe traditional challenge to just become Japanese Okinawan and that be the standard, and then there be a traditional forms division that is not given a Korean or Japanese label that just remains open, where if someone wanted to run a form like this, they could? Or do you think that we should just go ahead and go all in on doing the true traditional, more WKF style?
No, we're a sport karate. We are not WKF. We're not JKA. We're not, some of the Korean organizations. We're not that. So I like having, I think there should be a place for all three. I think like NASCA did a good job of adding in the Kempo division to give that style a little break. So I like the Kempo, the Japanese, the Korean, but why not be able to do, we have creative forms, extreme forms, musical forms, 3 different elements that you can do. We should have something for those performance-based katas, as long as we stick to it and adhere to some sort of rule standards.
I couldn't agree more. And so now, speaking of creative and musical and extreme, we're going to dive into one of the most exciting creative, musical, extreme categories, and that is the synchronized division with one of the most innovative synchronized forms of all time. Casey Marks, Lauren Carney, the 2 steps ahead of me in my bow staff lineage. Lauren was my instructor. Casey was Lauren's instructor. And now we're going to watch them work as a team in this form using just one bow. So, Chris, you recommended this form for the film study today.
This is my, yeah, man, this is my favorite team form of all time. When I saw them show up and they were walking out, and I was like, what's going on? Where's Lauren's bow? Like, I was excited to see Lauren and Casey do bow together. I was like, this is going to be good. And I was like, wait a minute, what's going on? And then they performed on Friday night, and I just sat in awe. Like, I've probably watched this video more than any other video there that I've sat and watched on YouTube for karate. I show this video to people who want to be introduced to sport karate and to see what we do. You have all the dynamics, clean, basic punches to synchronicity, excellent bow movement. The tricks that they throw in here are not quite as advanced as some of the bow tricks that we see now, but you can't have better striking and basics than what I see in this. Look at that, matching hands, forms. It's like a dance, a violent dance. It's just, man, it's great. I mean, what did you think watching this?
I mean, to me, that's the biggest thing that always stood out about Lauren and Casey is that, in my opinion, and I'm going to rewind this just so we can kind of rewatch it as we go through some of the history, bow kind of diverged into 2 different paths of innovation. There was simultaneously the Lauren and Casey path in the women's division, where the clean basics and really creative striking. If you look here, it's not just up, down, side, sides, and chop punch, rich chop punches. They're doing a wide variety of different traditional striking techniques. And in that variety, that's where they find creativity in addition to a few manipulations. But simultaneously, as that innovation and evolution was going on, there was also kind of the Nate Andrade, Ross Levine offshoot, where, yes, the striking and everything was still important, but they were pushing the boundaries more with the tricks. They were rolling the bow around the body, shooting the bow, kind of sliding off the shoulder, catching it before it falls off, things of that nature. And so we saw the difficulty take a big step up with them. Then that would get passed over into Corey Lutkus as Corey Lutkus started doing a lot more releases. And then when I come along and kind of start being successful in 2010, I kind of became a mutt of those 2 kind of evolution paths, right?
Yes.
Where I was a student of Lauren, and I was, always wanting to try to make sure that I had the most powerful and the best basics that I could and be creative through my basics in that way. But I was also trying to push the boundaries with the tricks as well, a la Corey Lutkus and Ross Levine and Nate Andrade.
And I think
that's how I saw bow evolution.
Oh, absolutely. You are right. There were 2 split fields. And then even in a sub-split field, you have the guys who like to do body manipulations versus the releases, the high release and spins. And I think, one of the biggest reasons, other than the fact that you probably work harder than a lot of people, you married those things. You put together good, clean basics, body manipulations, wacky tosses that you do now. I mean, it's fun to watch because it's not just the people who, I see a lot of people just throw, move, release, try to shoulder. And that's cool. But there has to be an element of martial arts in a martial arts form. So when you see people like yourself marrying those things together, that's a beautiful thing to watch. And,
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I hear you getting excited. Is that because of what's coming up?
Yes. Oh, yes. This is probably my other favorite form because I'm a huge fan of Casey. Casey is one of my favorites of all time. And to watch this young man, Wayne Douglas, if y'all don't know who this dude is, oh my, probably one of the fastest I've ever seen. Like just the intensity and speed for his age. And
Absolutely.
this
And that's
is,
what helped him become, he was the youngest ever recruit to Team Paul Mitchell. If I'm not
yes,
mistaken, he got added to Paul Mitchell when he was 9 years old, which is far younger than what anyone else has been. I think second place is like 12 years older. That's 3 years older than what
yeah,
Wayne was when he was brought on the team.
absolutely. I was gonna say that. I was like, I think he's the youngest to be on Paul Mitchell. Yeah. But I mean, there's no denying. What did he go like a whole year without losing or dropping at all? Like, just the consistency of that young man. And when I went to LA, I got to see him. He's still out there, or was out there then, working in the industry. So like, and he's still good with it. Like, that they were so in sync. They were so powerful. It was so different than everything else that you saw at the time.
That's awesome. And they were
I
always
love
changing the game. And we talk about the evolution of tricks. I mean, Wayne doing that's the one thing about film study is we get ads. But that was one thing about Wayne is that, he pushed the boundaries doing the throw and then 360 on his knees and then catch.
Yes.
That was way ahead of its time. He was doing that in like 2001, 2002. And people were really just then starting to do throw, spin, catch releases at that point. He was doing it on his knees.
On his knees. Absolutely. People were still just not really spinning as they released. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, that kid was amazing.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And now we're going to move to, we talked about you being both a forms and weapons competitor in addition to being a fighter. It's something you don't see as much nowadays in this kind of age of specialization where the fighters are fighters and the forms and weapons competitors are forms and weapons competitors, and they kind of stay in their lane. But throughout the 2000s, we had several major players, several major competitors who were successful at both. And a great example of that is Jason Borelli. We're going to watch his Ocean State Grand Nationals extreme form here.
Oh, yeah. Jason has one of the highest jump front kicks I think I've ever seen. Jason is super athletic, fast. What a talented martial artist he is as well. And cork, right in, sweep through, cork again, drop split. Pop up, kip. Is he gonna? Nope. That's the U.S. Open version.
About the
kip to the
fall?
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I think we covered that in a previous film study.
Sweat,
is that Jason Borelli and Anthony DeMarco went back and forth in the kind of forms grands there was a couple of years where I think they were going back and forth. And to call Anthony DeMarco out at one point, Jason Borelli did like the whole like jump up and just kind of like fall flat on his
back. Oh yeah.
Style.
Oh yeah, he did that. I think U.S. Open is the video that I thought it was going to be. But man, Jason is the same way because he did commas, he did forms, he did traditional forms, he fought everywhere. Last of an era. Oh, here we go.
And now we're going to
one is this?
We saw somebody be successful in forms. Now here's somebody in weapons. Another CJB member, because Jason was on CJB. We watched that form. This is Ross on CJB at Diamonds with his bow form.
And Ross is a bad man.
Amen to that. All-time
I love watching him.
Cup wins. I think he's got 2 weapons and 7 fighting, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Which is insane to think about.
Absolutely. The only people that beat him is the Plowden family. And yeah, Ross was innovative with him and Nate, tall guys with sticks, moving around, and powerful. Absolutely powerful. One of my favorites is when out of nowhere, people didn't know he could do a couple of tricks, was when he came out in Diamonds and bit the bow and threw the gainer.
Yeah.
I was amazed by that. I was like, I didn't know you could flip, buddy. But no, Ross was a very talented, he did traditional Korean forms as well. A lot of people may not know that as a junior, he did that. And the adult division, he just continued to win everything in bow and then eventually started to win everything in fighting as well.
Absolutely. And one thing that people don't realize, obviously Ross was always going through a gauntlet in his point fighting divisions, but the same was true about his weapons divisions. Not only in fighting was he, fighting Ray in the grands all the time and having to deal with that, but in the weapons divisions, I mean, he was competing in his prime against your Kalmans and your Matt Immigs and your Mark Canonizados, and he was in a very deep weapons division, and that's where he got wins at Warrior Cup and U.S. Open and Diamonds, all while all those big players were still competing. So the fact that Ross was able to be successful against that level of competition is a testament to how great of a martial artist he is all around. And speaking of martial artists who are great at a lot of different things, now we're going to go to one of the most entertaining sport karate competitors of all time, Kim Do.
best musical form competitor, in my opinion, actually using the musicality with it. And Kim's been around for forever. Mm-hmm. Kim was in Sidekicks, Chuck Norris. I mean, I remember watching Kim in the sequin gi and the cape as a kid. This form is one of my favorites because this is the gunshot. Boom, 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 boom. And he matches. Boom, boom. Oh man, he kills this. This Kim Pop Rodeo come through. He matches everything he does. People know him as a big tricker, but in this, he demonstrates that he's an amazing kicker as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then look at the stance transitions. He's hitting all those front stances, fully extending the hand techniques. And I want to talk about the tricking a little bit because, like, with that tricking combo we saw, that's nothing like the tricking combos you would see today. And I don't mean in terms of difficulty. I mean in terms of style. It almost feels like sometimes trickers today feel like they can't trick in whatever direction they want to. And I'm going to rewind this just so we see it again. It's almost like trickers feel like they have to trick from side to side and from corner to corner. Whereas you see Kim here just throwing that out the window and being like, no, I'm going to trick wherever I want to. What do you think about that?
I loved it. Stylistically, I think tricking has become the same through in sport karate. The combos have all kind of become the same. TD raise, cork through cork, or swing through, swing through. You'll find like a snapu every once in a while, but like back here with Kim, axe through to aerial, hook down to sweep. He throws a partial windmill back up to a hook. There you go, capoeira kick, and back through, and still hits all the elements. And as he goes through this, like you said, you transition back into hands, and then he'll throw another big trick at the end. Goes to show you can uppercut. Shout out Street Fighter. And then, like I said earlier, but Kim's leg. You're right. I mean, tricking I don't want to say cookie cutter at this point, but you kind of know what is going to happen when they set up on the side. Here's going to be a hook, maybe a 900, whatever.
And I think that that's probably going to be the makings as we move on to a Kim Do fight versus Raymond Daniels. But to kind of finish up that point, I think that that's what's going to be the making of the next great, memorable CMX forms competitor, extreme forms competitor, because really our last great extreme forms competitor was Matt Emick. You know what I mean? And he retired almost a decade ago at this point. And there's kind of been a changing of the guard throughout several different people after the fact. Micah Carnes had his time. Then Singal was winning for a few years. And then you go to like your Jacob Pintos and your Tyler Weavers. But it's kind of been like every year or two, there's been like a change.
Somebody new. Yes,
exactly.
Absolutely.
And it's because everybody's doing the same stuff. So whoever just does the hardest of the same stuff seems to be whoever wins that year. The next time that somebody innovates and does something different is probably, as long as they do it well, probably going to be that next memorable competitor, don't you think?
I 100% agree with you. When we talked about in the traditional element, when everybody starts to go one route, somebody else is going to be a shining star by doing something slightly different. And I'm looking forward to that happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And so now, speaking of shining stars, there's no star that shines brighter than Raymond Daniels over here in the black, taking on Kim Do, who we just saw do an extreme form in the straight up uniform, the purple and white.
Absolutely. Kim was a great fighter. He has his most well known thing is he hit Battle of Atlanta, cut a guy with a Webster. Like, what? Who hit somebody with a Webster? But he also has great blitzing techniques and basics. Here he's fighting Raymond Daniels. So, I mean, it doesn't get to showcase all of his skills. But, I mean, you see clean lines. He's blocking a lot of these techniques. It's not a blowout. This is not a 10-0 score. And then they start to have fun a little bit here coming up shortly. Raymond sticks to his game, stays on the blitz.
And then pats him down at the end.
Absolutely. Big shout out though, because
that tornado kick looked like it landed. I don't think they called it though.
No, they didn't. It skipped. I believe I was sitting there. I think that was right on the shoulder, but right there. So, and then Kim tries to hit him back with another tornado. Raymond throws a cartwheel. Here, Kim's gonna flip again. Yeah, man, they went back and forth, and it was a good time. Awesome. Big shout out to see. I love watching these videos because I get to see the great Ken Eubanks again.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So
Ray
here we go.
Thomas.
Now, Ray moves. Yep. Kim crawls through.
And what's funny is there's a lot of time left in this fight. Like this fight is still going, and they're still like they've already kind of resorted to the theatrics.
Yes. Yeah. It was that was a fun one. And you look at it, 3-2. It was a close fight until they started playing. And it was like, maybe we'll see. Trav.
And now we're going to shift gears, right? So we've been talking about kind of competitors that were great at both being able to do forms and weapons as well as being able to fight. Now we're going to shift gears and kind of go down a different path. We're going to talk about some of your friends over at Martial Arts InterNetwork. We've got the godfather of Martial Arts InterNetwork himself, Travis Plowden. And we're going to kind of watch a lot of the main podcast hosts over there. But starting with Travis, and this is him taking on David Boissonnet, who's now the promoter of the Quebec Open. So kind of interesting.
At the Quebec Open, that's right. And that's Team Paul Mitchell's Travis Plowden.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a very entertaining fight. David is a very, very tough competitor, and so is Travis. So I like this fight. Full circle. That was a nice reverse punch from Travis. He better have one. His uncle's Richard Plowden. There you go. We take that off again. Yeah, and then Travis has an unsuspecting leg.
Yeah, so I think we're going to see him let that loose here a little bit. I know a couple of fights that I've watched from him before, he lets that leg fly. And it's I think that because of his reverse punch being as effective as it was, when that leg would fly, it would catch some fighters off guard, right?
Off guard, absolutely. Right. Same thing here. You would expect Travis to throw a counter body punch, counter reverse punch, and he throws a side kick. You know, so these are different elements in his game, plus his height. God, he's tall. David takes off.
How fast David took off there. David's
David's a big guy, and he was very quick. I fought David at this tournament in super fights. No, he is a very, very tough competitor.
And that's one thing that I like about videos like this is that I feel like a lot of times people forget, like our promoters today, people forget that they were major players in sport karate as coaches or competitors. Or whatever. David was fighting. He fought several years after this as well. So he was fighting very close up until the time that he became a promoter.
I was going to say right before.
Competitors don't see.
Oh yeah, Dave and Claire both, and Sam Ganhun. They all. I mean, they competed up until probably the year right before, and it just happened to be, I'm probably going to stop competing soon. Oh yeah, you want to step into a new role? Absolutely, I love it. And you see those competitors do big things for their tournaments and for their events.
Absolutely. And that is a great promoting staff there they've got with David and Sam and Claire. They do an incredible job. I can't wait for the Quebec Open to be back so that we get to all head back up there up north.
Nice. Yeah, me too. I love Quebec. Quebec's one of my – nice sidekick. Quebec is one of my favorite events. I've always loved going there. Travis controlled that space really well. Ooh, Carlos Tierney, World Combat League.
So now we're going into the World Combat League, exactly, which was Chuck Norris's big sport karate, kickboxing, hybrid type of promotion. There's a lot of great sport karate fighters in there, but really the style of fighting is more of a kickboxing. I'll let you tell us more about it. But Carlos, kind of a recent addition to the Chris and Travis Experience podcast, and he's been a great addition to you guys' show. But now we're going to watch him. Instead of talking, we're going to watch him fight a little bit. So maybe start by just telling us a little bit about World Combat League and what it was like for point karate fighters going and doing this back then.
Chuck Norris created this league because he wanted to demonstrate the strike. He wanted to showcase striking. UFC had started to take off and the MMA world, but we wanted to showcase what we can do. I love the huge ring and the circle that he did. And stepping into this as a point fighter, it allowed us to demonstrate it's not just a game of tag. That's kind of one of the things that we get said about. Don't think just because we stop on the break doesn't mean we can't move forward. And this was our big showcase to the world. You had Carlos, who just absolutely, yes, his jab is so strong. His front leg is so strong, but he has movement that the traditional kickboxers don't necessarily have. Jack did very well by utilizing the same thing. And then obviously Raymond used this to catapult himself into, glory and Bellator and everything that he's doing. I believe Carlos had the opportunity, if he chose to do it, to do the exact same things. I mean, he's so fast and so strong, utilizing his leg. And that is the one thing Carlos doesn't do as much in the World Combat League as he would in point fighting. He doesn't kick as much.
Right.
When he does, he picks his shots and lets them fly like a daggone missile that they are. But you see him adjusting and adapting to more of the traditional kickboxing base. And then, surprise, this is also what we do.
Right. And then what's so impressive about this, because I think this is only the second time I've ever watched this fight, he's landing that front hand whenever he wants to. I believe they were saying in the commentating, this is a dude that was a pro kickboxer, his opponent, and Carlos is landing that front hand every time he throws it.
Yes, and like that comes from the distance change and the spacing that we have as point fighters. We understand when and how to hit that first shot because that's what we're looking for. And then Carlos does an amazing job of settling and throwing 2, 3, 4 off of that. So I think a lot of traditional kickboxers, until they saw us doing this, didn't really understand how to move and cut. We see a lot of fighters now doing that more, but until we got a showcase, they didn't really understand what we do.
Right. Absolutely. Now, I did notice when they showed the scorecard, we saw, I think it was 50-35 in favor of LA, who Carlos was representing here as one of the All-Stars. And so is in World Combat League, is that like a blowout, or is that like, what kind of a lead is that, the like 50-35?
Well, it's not necessarily a huge blowout, but it's pretty big. They did a 15-point must system instead of a 10. Based upon different things. So you could see 15-14 fights, 15-9 fights. Like, there was somewhere if you got knocked out, it was 15-0. So, I mean, that showcased where those fights were. And it's a pretty substantial lead. But some of the LA fights were, 60-11 and things like that, where there were a lot of knockouts.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw him rock him in the opening moments of this fight. It's a miracle this dude's still on his feet, really.
Honestly, it really is. Very, and you can look at the difference. Very flat-footed, looking for more power, versus Carlos's lighter bounce, the ability to move out of the way, evade when that strong jab comes, and then step in when to close that distance, and then just kind of move out of the way.
I don't know what he's putting his hands for.
It's always because it wasn't a knockout, so it's in the eyes of the judges, and you always got to be confident. That's one of the clips of our opening. Hard blitz, and then staying in the pocket and trading.
And one thing that's interesting there, especially, when we're looking at point fighting competitors making the switch over to full contact and MMA, that last highlight that we saw, that was from the clinch of Carlos landing those 2 shots. Point fighters are never fighting from the clinch. You're never in that position and having to strike from there. So to see a point fighter effectively striking from the clinch like Carlos just did, just further proof that sport karate fighters really can make a transition into full contact and be just fine. In addition to what we've seen from Ray and Wonderboy Thompson and so many others, Ross fighting kickboxing. So.
Michael Venom Page. Yeah, we got a lot of guys that are big namers now.
Mm-hmm. And so now moving on to a different show for the Martial Arts InterNetwork. Now we're moving on to Inside Scoop, and we're going to have a look at Alex Dingman. I believe this was the Battle of Atlanta, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it was. Alex had a pretty decent and a very good front lead leg. So we're going to see a lot of that lifting up of that leg and firing it from different angles.
Also important to note the uniform representing National Karate, the Larry Carnahan school system that Alex is represented from up in the Minnesota area.
Yes. He comes from a long line of fighters from his era, and just from his group that they team fought, Greg and Elias and Hamid. Man, they had a camp for BJ. And they all had their own elements. Some kicked, some punched, some moved. Like it was. And Alex was one of the kickers, man. And you see, early 2000s kick and follow right away. I like that, Alex. All right, well, boom, and shoots off. I was no slouch either. So,
yeah, I saw Alex's reverse punch land there, but they called it.
Yep. And it's funny because watching some of these videos back and forth now and we can only see from our angle. So we're at an upper angle from the judges. And I think that's something that isn't always looked at or thought about when we watch a video. We watch this video, oh, from my angle, how could you not see that? Well, they're not at our angle.
Right. And then another additional factor, because a lot of times I see debates of like people going back and watching the video and then calling their own points and then saying like, oh, well,
Right.
so-and-so should have won this fight. But in reality, what the actual score of the fight is changes the way that fighters fight. So even though you may have the score one way, those fighters knew the score is something different, and that's going to change the way they fight. So you can't really say based on whoever landed more techniques in the video, that's who should have won. Does that make sense?
Yes, 100%, because it's all about strategy and ours, because it's a speed and a strategy game. I wouldn't go forward had I gotten that side kick and been up 2 more points. I wouldn't go to that blitz, so you wouldn't have gotten that point. You're 100% right on that.
See Alex kind of going for the wild tornado kick there. He's definitely in the midst of a comeback effort. I know, spoiler alert, he does come back and win this fight. So he's about to string some points together here pretty quickly, I think.
Yes. Rattles off some kicks back to back.
And that's what kickers can do. I mean, especially,
Yes.
kicks, those are high scoring techniques. They can swing the momentum in your favor very quickly.
Absolutely. It takes 4 blitzes to hit 2 kicks. And we saw where
there was the 2-point kick right there. That gave him the lead, and that was it.
That's it. And then,
heavy with the commercials today. It's Anthony Joshua, by the way. He's coming. He's fighting Tyson Fury pretty soon.
Tyson Fury. Yeah, they got a two fight contract to
Who
go.
you got in that matchup, by the way?
I'm going with Tyson Fury. Head movement, volume punching, clean angles off of that. Anthony's shot is to knock him out.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, that from what we saw in the second Deontay Wilder fight and the way that Fury moved and just dominated him with his volume, I feel like we're probably going to see the same thing against Anthony Joshua. But we're not talking about boxing. We're talking about sport karate. And now for the other co-host of the Inside Scoop podcast on Martial Arts InterNetwork, we've got Jeff Doss, one of the great kickers in sport karate history, an absolute NBL legend. And this is one of his signature forms at the 2011 Super Grands.
Oh yeah, this is one of the ones that everybody talks about. This is a favorite. Jeff and Jeff is a great competitor all around. Obviously, his forms are amazing. He does weapons. His combos are good. Traditional is fantastic. Boom, just doing odd stuff. Is this the elbow? I think this is the elbow drop. I love this form.
Coming up at the end, yeah.
Yep. Jeff's kicks are just fantastic. The control of his leg. Well, one of my favorites was all an accident. Oh, here we go.
I was about to say, one of his signatures right here, having the hands talking to each other.
Intergalactic, baby. This is I love this form. And just making it, and again, now this isn't a creative element where he gets to make it fun.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And one of the things I loved about Jeff was the way that he adapted kind of what was his MO when he moved over from competing more NBL, and as NASCA became more popular. Here's the people's elbow coming up. I hate that it goes to frame there. But in NBL, he was, although he was known for Korean forms and his ability to win that, he was most known for CMX forms, right? Extreme creative forms in particular. And then he comes over to NASCA, makes stage at the U.S. Open for Korean forms, and he was doing both forever. But in the later stage of his career, he was more heavily focused on NASCA and was winning there with traditional forms, and that kind of became his MO. So the ability for a competitor to kind of change what they're known for in the interest of maintaining success, because by the time that Jeff came to NASCA, tricking was what was winning the Extreme Forms division no matter what. So he was going to be hard-pressed to win with only kicks in the Extreme Forms division. So he said, that's fine, I'll just win overalls with traditional forms.
And he did. That's 100% right. Watching Jeff being able to adjust that was a fantastic thing, because he still did creative forms. He still did those kicks. That's what I was going to say. One of my favorites was he had a hurt leg, so he did those same kicks from his knee. He circled kick and twist kick and everything else from the knee. So yeah.
Crazy. That is awesome. And so now as we move into our last kind of theme here, this is one big video. And this is because I believe I watched this in person.
Yep, you were there.
This was like the best team fighting match that I have ever seen in my life on video, in person, doesn't matter. This is one of the most closely contested and entertaining team fights that I've ever seen. It's got comebacks. It's got world-class fighters. It's got a game-winning technique at the end. So I'll let you're sitting in the coach's chair for the All-Stars here as they take on Corrali, which is pretty much undisputed at the time, the best team in Europe. All-Stars, arguably the best team in the United States at the time, with Ray and Jamal and Jack and yourself even, you know what I mean? So that was a deep roster. Yeah. So set the stage here. You are sitting just to the right side of the screen in the coach's chair for this match. Talk us.
Oh man, this is the finals. This is team fighting. This is the Irish Open. This is everything. This is what you come for, grand champion in team fighting. We sent out Jamal and they went to send Zolt. In this, I would imagine their thought process is to try to get a big lead with Zolt's lead leg, which in this happens. Jamal is a very good at movement, so we thought it was going to be Jamal will move, keep the score low, not let Zolt run up. And unfortunately for us in this exchange, this didn't happen. Zolt's lead leg took over, and man, oh man, does he have a lead leg.
Absolutely.
I believe at one point here he surprises.
It's scary.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I fought him quite a few times, and it's always a challenge because look how far he's covering 3 mats with that pull, and it's not wasted 3 or 4 kicks where you can time the kick to come in. It's a 1 pull with a hard chamber, and then he extends it where he knows it's going to hit. Just a dang old lead leg, man. Without saying anything else, that young man can kick.
Yeah, and one of the things that made it so effective in the last 2-3 years of his career was he developed a legitimate hands game where he could use those kicks and then follow if he didn't land one of the kicks, and it made him almost unbeatable there for like a year or two, right there close to the end of his career.
Absolutely, and he did. He made that adjustment and got that punch game strong. Because that was always one of the things. If you can get around his lead leg, you'll be fine. You get around the lead leg, obviously it's easier said than done. But if you can do it, that fight is yours. Right. When he developed those hands, that wasn't necessarily because he always, I did it too. I would always duck under his lead leg and go on for that duck under back fist. And then it took him a little while, but eventually he learned to drop the knee and drop the back fist right down on it.
Mm-hmm. Now, we were talking about sending Zolt out so early in this fight and how interesting, because typically Zolt fights the anchor. Typically you put Zolt in last so that even if you're down, you can try to make a comeback. Yes. That's how Paul Mitchell always used it, right? So knowing Absolutely. That you guys have Ray on your squad and everything, who sent out first here? Did Corrali send out first, maybe expecting Ray to come out to see Zolt, or do you remember how that if I remember correctly, I believe we sent out Jamal, but Corrali is so deep as well. That they figure, and I figure they figure if they can pull up the lead, they're going to use Richie to run on Ray. Ah, I see.
And to keep their lead. So sometimes styles do make the fights, and they figured the style would create a big point lead, which it worked out for them very well. What we ended up having for later on is we also have a deep roster. So, I mean, you have 2 deep rosters with guys who can pretty much fight anybody. And, there's 1 or 2 where it's an offset match.
Right. And that's one of the cool things about this match is that, and probably why you 2 were the 2 best teams in the world at this Irish Open, is typically, through a team fighting, you go to an ASCA tournament. For each team, which 3 fighters are fighting. But with Corrali and All-Stars here, if there's 3 people fighting, you don't know which 3 it's going to be.
Nope. And it can be any one of them depending on who you throw.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Because that was a big lead for them, down 12. So in comes next RD and Richie, and it's exactly what I expected. So you get the lead where you can, and then you maintain the lead where you can, trying to nullify Raymond, one of the big point scorers.
Right, absolutely. And one thing that's important to point out here is that it is a 4-match fight. You get 4 matchups. Typically, NASCA it's 3 fighters. This one we are getting 4 matchups, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Because Jack still fights and Trevor fights. Jack fights Laszlo, I believe.
Trevor fights Tomas.
And Trevor fights Tomas, yes.
And so we saw Richie trying to move there early, right in line with the strategy. For an update on the score, for everybody watching, 13-1. You can see it on the backside scorekeeper there in favor of Corrali.
That's right. One each way.
What do you think about the one each way call? I know that's something that people have.
I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of one each way, because if you're not able to decide and you go one each way and somebody has a definitive answer, then that they will always get that point. So it's for me, it's a cop out. Either say no score because it was too close for me to tell, or I definitely saw this person getting the point. Right. That eliminates the room for, I wouldn't say miss points, but closer exchanges that lead to go one way versus the other.
Right. And in the last couple of clashes here, we see Richie being aggressive, going at Ray, being the aggressor, and Ray scoring on several counter strikes there. Richie got that last one. Has to be a little bit surprising, right? Because we thought that the strategy would be to have Richie move and just not get hit.
Right. Well, but that's the thing. When you assume that that's what's going to happen, you have to be able to shift gears when you want. And that can happen in a two exchange swing. I can wait, try to score, and then right off the next bat, score again, and that's what you see Richie doing here. He's right. moving. When Ray gets a little bit aggressive, he'll go. Then when Ray sits, he tries to take off and match that.
Hook kick lands on the back of the head. That was nice.
Yes. People don't know Ray can kick, not just the jump spin.
I mean, hey, if people don't know Ray can kick at this point, they need to watch more film.
Yeah, that's true. But Richie fires right back with a blitz, so he's never letting him get. Ray closes the gap a little bit more, and then Richie will always say, "Well, I'll keep my one."
So for the people at home watching this, I think we're getting close to the end of the – yeah, we're at the end of this. No, we're not at the end of this round yet, but we're getting close to it. Score is still 19-8 in favor of Corrali. On the All-Stars bench, is there ever any nervousness? I mean, you've got Ray out there, and this lead isn't made up for yet. Or, I mean, do you guys know how deep you are and there's not much worry?
There's a little worry at this point. Because some of the way that this match is going up, but we know that, and for me, I know that I have two favorable matchups here. Right. I have Trevor going against Tomas. Tomas is a counter fighter and a puncher, where Trevor is a kicker, and he's very powerful. So yes. I see like with the Zoltan Jamal, I see Trevor having the ability to kick, and then I have the Iceman Jack Felton running the anchor. And honestly, it didn't matter which fighter Corrali sent. I have confidence in Jack Felton. It's the same way with everyone else.
Absolutely, especially Jack Felton at the Irish Open, who's made the 100% probably more than anybody else, right?
Other than Raymond, yeah.
Other than Ray, right?
And most of those, he was in the finals with Ray. So, yeah.
For sure. And then one 100%. Thing about Trevor here, I've always thought Trevor's one of the most intimidating fighters. Look at that kick. I'm gonna rewind so we can watch that kick again. But, yes. I mean, Trevor would intimidate fighters with his kicks and with his power and with his demeanor. We're going to watch this kick real quick. But just talk a little bit about how scary Trevor Nash was.
Oh, I've stood across from him twice. And I got punched and kicked very hard twice. He is, a lot of people with a very successful lead leg is a quick scoring to touch lead leg. Trevor doesn't do anything to touch you. Trevor does everything to hit you and let you know that you are in a fight. Trevor still comes from that, the late 90s, early 2000s, come all the way through where, it was a little bit more of a fight, not just a point score. So he can punch, so he is a very intimidating person to stand in front of. And in Europe, they don't necessarily fight as hard as we do. They're very talented. They're very good, but they're not as aggressive and gritty, I would say. So to have that standing in front of you is a very difficult thing. There's that 2-point axe kick again. I think he caught him with like 4 of them. In this fight. So we see this score quickly closing the gap. We're at 14-20 now. Tomas steps in. He's got good exchanges.
And that's how quickly a fight can change. You know, we were talking, it was a 10-point gap going into this round. Trevor cuts it all the way down to 5, and then all of a sudden, this is a close fight. It's anybody's game, right? And that's what great fighters can do, and that's how quickly a team fight can change.
Absolutely. And again, lineups, matchups. Who gets the favorable matchups? Because teams are a different animal.
And then things getting a little bit chippy, as expected, between Corrali and All Stars. And so, yeah, one thing that, you know, for the audience that maybe not be as familiar with sport karate history, at the time, Paul Mitchell had already recruited Zolt and Laszlo. So Zolt, who you already saw fight, Laszlo, who you will see fight. We would later recruit Tomas and Richie as well. And Paul Mitchell over in America for years and years and years, since what's called the Exodus, where Ray and Jody went to straight up, and then Ray went and made All Stars. Paul Mitchell and All Stars have always had a very competitive rivalry, and that carried over in Europe with Corrali and All Stars as well. And then we see
Absolutely.
that in the chippiness here, which is one of the reasons that I wanted to show this, is because for anybody that's seen this fight before, they know the outcome, which is maybe not an outcome that would always make me so happy, but I know it would make Chris happy.
Right. It was, you know, and you know, being on the winning side of this is great, but like you said, to set this up, this is one of the most exciting, one of the best back and forth team fights there are, since, you know, NASCA went away from 5-man team fighting.
Right.
Because there are some old school DKT Force One, Metro All Stars, Paul Mitchell Metro All Stars fights that run deep like this. But again, you know, current status, does he get the blitz? He does. And that puts us within what, like 3 or something, right?
I can't see the scoreboard right now, but I think you're within 4. So Jack's going
4.
into this fight down 4. And you know that you're dealing with a scary Jack Felton when Jack runs into the ring like that. Like, we typically don't see that emotion from Jack.
No, he's typically the Iceman. Jack was the fired up man right there. He goes, I got this. And that's what he said. I got this. And darted out there. Okay. hey, Captain Jack, I got your back. And when we do, and you know, Laszlo is a deceptively good kicker, and his hands and his blitz speed is very, very fast. So to see Jack being able to nullify this and take off when he does catch Laszlo on his side kicks on the way in, it's really a testament to both fighters.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, that lead leg hook kick of Laszlo's, it comes out of nowhere. It's lightning fast. But then, as you mentioned, Jack, with his pace and his timing and his skill level, really nullifies that throughout this match.
Yeah, because and you know, it was on the day, because I've seen Laszlo do great things too with Jack on a different day. But I think that momentum from Trevor shifting in set kind of the tone and the pace for that.
Right.
And allowed for that, because we see a lot of times in sport karate the momentum shifting and swinging, that's a big factor.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And, you know, one thing that is real that oftentimes people forget about, and as the score is tied right now with Jack tying the score, and then taking the lead right there, it looks like,
one each.
One each. But see, that's how confusing this can get, because the center called one each way, corner judge calls to Laszlo, other corner judge calls to Jack, and so in that case it doesn't affect the score, but still.
No.
And so now we see Corrali's got a 2-point advantage back. Laszlo goes for that signature ridge hand, but Jack smothers it.
Yes, steps in, smothers with the back fist. Down 1, short time.
D-side. There's that D-side you were talking
Boom.
about.
And then takes off right away. No scores. Oh, Jack did get the score. 1 back over. It's tie score. 1 each way. Tie score. 1 each way.
And then that one goes to Jack, and then that's the fight. And then we see look, like, you never see a celebration like that from Jack. You never see Jack like running around the ring in celebration. So it just shows you kind of the gravity of the moment and how big of a fight it really was.
Absolutely.
And, I remember watching that, even though when that last clash happened, I was like, I've always, obviously had a ton of respect for the All-Stars. And one thing that's weird about me as a point fighting fan is that I am like, loyal to Paul Mitchell and Corrali till the day that I die. But at the same time, it's like,
Absolutely.
I really like Jack Feld. You know, like I can't.
Yeah, no, I get it. No,
I
100%. I'm the same way. My squad is my squad no matter what, but you have to respect. You have to. There are other fighters that you just have to admire a little bit because they're talented. They're very good. Corrali, you know, we have All-Star versus Paul Mitchell rivalry, All-Star and Corrali rivalries, but to deny those fighters their skills is insane. Yeah.
No, I couldn't agree more. And that does it for all of our film study today. We've covered a full gauntlet of sport karate history, going from some of your old school fights and forms to other fighters that have been successful in forms, some of your favorite sync routines, all the way going up into some of the podcast host over at Martial Arts InterNetwork. And then, of course, finishing things off with that all-time great team fight between Corrali and All-Stars. So, Chris, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate your time, your expertise, your thoughts. Anything else that you want to share with our audience before we head on out of here?
No, man, this has been a great experience. It's been fun. We've been talking a little bit about doing this, so I'm glad I got to be on. I love what you're doing. Shout out to Black Belt Magazine. I remember getting all the issues when I was a kid. I used to go to the supermarket and be like, they got the Black Belt Magazine. I want to be on this magazine. So to kind of have a little bit of part in that with you is really cool for me. So thank you very much.
That's awesome. It's a pleasure. And thank you so much once again for your time. Thank you to all of our viewers for tuning in and supporting the show. If you enjoyed this, be sure to drop some comments, give it a share. Make sure that you're sharing it with all of your martial arts community. And after you finish this episode, go on over and check out the Martial Arts InterNetwork on Facebook, CTE, the Chris and Travis Experience, Inside Scoop, Fist Kicks and Flicks, and so much more. Definitely want to check them out. They're doing a great job over there. So thank you all once again. This has been episode 59 of the Jackson Rudolph podcast, and I'll see you next time.